Hi, in this video we will get an overview of the way that the code generator does views generations. The structure of a view file which is located inside a table, I will use products as the example table, reflects very much the way that the URL file within a table looks. And you'll also see here that number of things from the views are imported directly to the URL. So most of this stuff in the views are used in the URL and vice versa. So let's take a look at the views file here. The first function in the views file is called getQS. And this is the whole query system, which is kind of complicated, and I will dedicate a whole video for that. So right now we'll just simply skip that part and go to the next part here, which is the list records. I have tried in the code generator in general to use class-based views, and I'm also using braces, which you can see on the login required mixing and the permission required mixing here. The way that I do security is actually based on these class-based views with the combination of braces, where I go in and define, in this case where it's a list, products, view product, and I raise an exception if this requirement is not met. That's a 403 exception. A product list class-based views contain a get query set, which is linked directly to this whole query system that we will discuss in a later video. And at the same time, when I do a list, I prepare the query form on a list. And the way that this query form is prepared is by populating the different select options inside the query form. And this whole query set definition here depends on how the record access and the limit table parameters are set in the application definition. I also prepare the sort form within this class-based view here, and I return that to the list. I have a redirect view here that is triggered when you click on a header and needs to sort, or when you sort from the menu system. I have a fixed view here, which is the multi-line edit view. I have a similar multi-line edit fixed view for the extra view here. And I have an update view, which is an update view, class-based view here for single record edits. When I say that we have these updates and views up here, this is for field groups. So when you see multi-line field groups or you see single record field groups, that comes from these views. Another thing which might be interesting is that I use a model form set view, which is a third-part Django extension to use these multi-line views. For each of the field groups, in the case of products, we have two, a general and a dimension. I have similar multi-line edits and single record edits, product general update, product dimension update. And that's kind of the same thing as with the fixed and the extra. Then I have a view which is a detail view, and I also call it product detail. And basically what that does is that presents the table in detail form, where you can view things in that form. I have an update view, which is an update view where I show the whole table in different panels or in tabs, or however I do it, in update mode. So that's for existing records. I have a similar create record view, which is a create view, again a class-based view. What I do both in the update and the create view is I go in and I look at if there are any initial values, and if there are, I set them in as default. For instance, what I'm testing for here, and we are in the product table, is that if this product create was clicked from the product group, I will automatically go in and set the product group as default. So where I came from becomes default. At the same time, what I do, I go in and I set up the relations inside the forms. In this case, I populate the product groups. All product groups are inside a select box or a radio button, depending on what has been chosen as a widget. Again, this code here depends on the record access in the application definition and the limit table in the application definition. I also, after a form has been validated, I go in and I call a function called setUser. The setUser function is located here down in the standards. And what the setUser function does is that it goes into the instance of the current record, and it sets the logged in user. In creation mode, it sets it as both creator, updater, and owner. In update mode, it only changes the updater. You can see here that we pass in the self-request user, which is the current user. I have a view, which is a delete view for deleting records. And what is done here in this part of the code is I go in and I analyze the current record I'm on. I figure out if there are any underlying one-to-many relations from that record. If there are one-to-many relations, I tell the user that on top of, in this case, deleting this particular product, it will also delete the underlying inventory statements, inventory transaction statements, and order statements, because they would be referring to a non-existing product if you delete the product. For obvious reasons, this only happens if the delete method is set to cascade in the relation definition. The last view I have here, which is a redirect view, that means no extra screens or HTML code is needed, is an export view. In this view, we call a function called sendExport. And this function takes the current list with the query options inside the list. That's why we call getQS from here. And it packs it into a comma-separated file, and it emails it directly to the current user. That is, of course, if you are allowed to export records. Again, I have a permission required mixing from the braces, and I go in and I ask if the user is allowed to export products. That has to be set. If the user is not allowed to do that, I raise an exception and go to a page 403. So this was basically an overview of what views are automatically being generated, and it's exactly the same views that are being generated for each table. The only thing that varies here is whether or how many field groups the table have. The more field groups, the more different views are being generated, obviously. A view of a fairly simple table like products consists of 686 coding lines, which also backs up why I chose to have another level where tables have their own standard Django file, source files like models and views and URLs, etc., etc. If I had packed that all together on the schema level, which is what Django in the standard format tells you to do, I would have ended up with very, very big source files, and that's never good. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it. I didn't go very much into coding details here. This was more an overview, but I will make a later video where coding details are included. Most of the stuff in here for each of these different views can also be found in the normal Django documentation under class-based views. Thank you very much for listening.